So if there was ever going to be a video where I catch a ban, it'd probably be this one. And it'd be for a similar reason I caught a ban previously, in that I'm talking about China not in a disparaging way, like not in an insulting way. I'm just talking about the realities of the Chinese economy. And the last time I did that, when I talked about banking, I incurred a ban, and I didn't get told why. I tried to. They didn't even give me a chance to appeal it. It just was a flat out week-long ban that I could do nothing about. And when I emailed an appeal in, they said denied, basically. No reason, no telling me what was for. So if I do catch a ban here, because I'm going to continue talking about China, it's relevant. But if I do catch a ban here, you can get me at my other TikTok, my alternate, which is at CPScott16. So this is 15. Next one up is 16. Follow me there as well. Or my YouTube channel, which is CP Scott. So I'm going to continue posting about China because it's more of my knowledge base than Russia. I'm obviously going to keep talking about Ukraine and Russia because I know the tactical side of that, the military, because that's where, when I worked in NATO, that's what I worked on. But from a geopolitical standpoint, geoeconomic standpoint, I know China more. And this one's going to be talking about the real estate situation, the crisis that China is heading towards. And we've seen the videos of tanks being deployed to China to deal with the bank runs. Those have been debunked. That wasn't really happening in regard to control. That was just training exercise that was pre-planned. But that doesn't mean China doesn't have a real problem in its real estate sector, because real estate represents 30% of China's GDP. And for the average Chinese citizen, 70% of their investment portfolio is in real estate. This is a really scary problem, especially if there's going to be a real estate downturn. And I just want to give a quick shout out to the Business Basics guys on YouTube. They provide a lot of this information too. I'm just kind of collecting it and giving my own spin on it as well. This is all largely open information anyways. I get a lot of it from the BBC, Wall Street Journal, The Economist, Journal, etc., a lot of places. But just want to give a shout out because there are a lot of people doing a lot of thinking in this space, including me. But over the last 2 decades, Chinese real estate has created a self-perpetuating fear of missing out across its population, to the point where people were buying houses before construction even began. Now, that doesn't sound like a problem because sometimes that happens in the US. However, the companies such as Evergrande, which was the biggest real estate company in China, would lease a piece of land from the local government, and then they would turn around and sell the houses that were supposed to be there, receiving full payment from bank loans, those people making those loans having a mortgage before even breaking ground on the house. But this was an issue because demand was so high. And when demand is high, more people are happy to take out mortgages like this, saying that they expect that they'll get future returns on their real estate investment. The big problem here is that real estate companies such as Evergrande wouldn't start construction on the houses with the money they just got from the buyer. Instead, they would use the money as a down payment to buy more land from the government so they can once again get more loans to try and get more people to buy land and buy this real estate. It was a system where they self-perpetuated into a pyramid scheme where they would sell more land to people to use that to get more loans, to sell more land, never actually be constructing any homes. Now you can see this is already a huge problem, and it's basically a real estate pyramid scheme. Regulation in the country is supposed to not allow this to happen, but because the Chinese Communist Party distributed the market down to the local government level, governments at the local level were reaping the benefits because they were leasing this land to companies like Evergrande. And I'm not even talking about the corruption that was happening. This is just the legit, not even really, like the legit loan side of things in the pyramid scheme. It's like, what's the legit part of a pyramid scheme? Needless to say, many of these provinces in China were getting 50% of their revenues from leasing the land to companies like Evergrande. So of course they weren't going to regulate this. This alone created an enormous real estate bubble in China, greater than the 2008 real estate bubble in the US. And cracks started to form in Evergrande's facade when angry suppliers started protesting over the unpaid bills. and bondholders became impatient with not getting any money from these real estate investments they thought they were making. And this isn't even the worst part, because Evergrande would list these houses that were not built, mind you, as assets on their balance sheet to get more loans from banks so they can attempt to maybe finish construction, but more than likely buy more land to sell to other people. But they also use these loans to continually perpetuate the scheme, the pyramid scheme. They needed the growth for it to work. So they never started building the houses or apartments, or they just never finished them. At least not enough to keep up with what they were promising to the people by a long shot. And I don't think in the history of ever there's been a more leveraged industry than the Chinese real estate industry right now. Just to recap, these real estate companies made plans to build homes, sold the homes before materials were even on the ledger, then turned around and levied the already sold homes as an asset, which is an accounting no-no. There's no way that works. Just so that their balance sheet looked like they had more assets than they did, so they could get more loans from banks. This only worked initially because the Chinese government was guaranteeing the loans, but it only continues to work if you have an infinite number of real estate ventures that you can make. You have to grow. That's how a pyramid scheme works. So this means that the government became over leveraged, and the taxpayers are on the hook for bailouts to the tune of $1 trillion is probably the first bailout. Now, to compare, the U.S. bailout of companies after the 2008 crisis was $498 billion. The first bailout from China is expected to be $1 trillion. And like I said, the only way this works is if they grow forever. Well, that won't happen because China's population is dropping. And trust in Evergrande's ability to stay solvent has completely crumbled because they started missing payments on their loans. Does that sound familiar? Sounds like Enron, right? Enron was a company that had $38 billion in liabilities when it went under, in a similar pyramid scheme only in the energy sector. Evergrande has over $300 billion in liabilities. And I keep saying Evergrande, they weren't the only one doing this. They were just the largest one doing this. Almost every real estate company in China is operating this way. And this is an industry that in China that may be over leveraged by $5.3 trillion. This is Enron on the worst possible steroids ever. And when I read that $5.3 trillion, I dropped my phone and said, oh my God. $5.3 trillion in over-leveraged debt in this one singular industry in China. Millions are going to lose their livelihoods, and that is where banking comes in. The Chinese Communist Party is trying to help these real estate companies build projects, but some haven't even been built and finished since a decade. Others just started when they were sold in 2019. The pace is way too slow, and any new sales of anyone foolish enough to buy into this scheme are going solely towards paying off loans rather than construction. These projects are being delayed. And home buyers and investors, some of whom had their whole life savings in place in these real estate ventures, would begin to ask about where their homes were, and they were given excuses. So they started demanding their money back, and they couldn't get it. Hard cash was leveraged against these loans rather than being available to the Chinese people in these banks. So what do the people do? They stopped paying their mortgages. 300 development projects costing over $100 billion are now not getting their mortgage payments. 30 to 50,000 people had stopped paying their mortgage, and that is growing. That's enormous. This is an economic firestorm for China over the next few years, and it's going to be worse than the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis, which cost the world $2 trillion. This could cost China alone $6 to $8 trillion and will lead to the Chinese economic collapse. Unlike 2008, there are no homes for Evergrande to repossess and liquidate. These loans are based on nothing. So when people want their money back, banks are limiting withdrawals because the banks are going to have to eat every loan that they lose money on. They can't repossess anything. So millions and possibly even tens of millions of people in China and others that invested in Chinese real estate are going to lose everything. And all of those roads, all of that anger is going to be directed at Beijing and Xi Jinping. And that's why China is probably in crisis mode right now.